Good afternoon, South Africa. Good day, world, from wherever you are joining us. My name is Natalia Molebatsi, and it is an honor, a privilege, and all kinds of excitement to be here again at Poetry Africa, courtesy of the Center for Creative Arts at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, courtesy of the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Arts, Sports and Culture, the French Institute of South Africa, Total Energies, and presenting to you this session, Writing Poetry, Embodying Queerness. I am full of breath and soul and excitement to be sitting with two of some of the most inspirational people for me, and I'm sure I speak for a world of poetry lovers. We are going to be speaking about ourselves, about our processes, about our choices and the work that we do, and we are going to be speaking about wild imperfections. I am joined by, may I say, the legendary Staceyann Chin. I remember sitting at those days of Urban Voices and watching the power of Staceyann Chin just giving us everything in one body, embodying joy, extreme joy, and anger, and love, and style, all at the same time. And this performer, writer, activist, Staceyann Chin, writer of the collection Crossfire, A Litany for Survival, winner of the American Book Award. I won't read the entire bio. She is Googleable. Just, you can find her everywhere. I will continue to read through her bio as we continue, because I am moving on to another legend of a queer people's fighter, human rights poet. I remember just watching in awe, sitting in Ghana and watching. I'm coming back to introduce another special member of this panel. Just hang in there, wait, I'm coming. I remember just watching in Ghana the kind of work that this poet was inspiring us to do and to think about. Olumide Popoola, who has published essays and poetry and short stories and novella, plays, and collaborated with artists in museums and doing just amazing work that puts together the ideas of queer people, and we'll talk about that later as we talk to futures in the making. All that to say, hello world, please help me welcome on this Poetry Africa stage, Staceyann Chin, Olumide Popoola, and last but not the very least, there is somebody even more important than these two poets put together. There is somebody called Zuri in the house. Hello world, say, hey Zuri! Zuri, welcome, and please stay with us because I am going to ask you some questions. I'm so happy that you are here. Guys, say hello to the people. I've been talking for the past forever and you haven't said anything. Say hello to the people.
Hi. Hello, everybody. It's such an honor to be here. Gratitude.
Well, thank you. These two poets have been so generous with their work and are published in Wild Imperfections an anthology of womanist poems, which has come out finally, because last year we were sitting at Poetry Africa without a book, but we were still sitting with poems and with poets. This year we are sitting with the poets and with the book that came out from Penguin Random House in South Africa, and will come out from Cassava Republic Press in the UK and the rest of the world. So we are here to make some noise. I know an hour is too little, so let me get down to it. But before I start, Olumide and then Staceyann, please just share a little bit about how you have been. The two of you with your families, how have you been in these past 18 months of a tumultuous interruption of our lives as we know them?
Yeah, okay, let me start. And it's nice that Zuri is here. Hi there, because this is actually one of the things that I was hard, but I loved the most about the pandemic, is that our children are not hidden away anymore, that they often come and are part of everything. And I think once I got into the groove of that, everything got a little bit easier. At the beginning, I was still on that old way of doing things where I normally had a babysitter and you'll be there alone, and it stressed me out. And then I just get used to my daughter coming in whenever. So yeah, of course, there's been a challenging time. There's nothing to say, but there are lessons to learn. To learn here, and I'm having a fairly quiet-ish autumn, which is good to take stock also about everything that has happened. But I'm in a good space. I managed to see my family in Germany, so I'm happy. That was my main thing, that I wanted to see my family. But today I'm good, except for a little tiny cold.
Well, good to have you here, Olumide.
We are currently on the island of Jamaica, where I was born and raised. Zuri and I are spending the next year here. One of the good things about the pandemic is that it has allowed us to redefine, to shift, to do things differently. And to spend more time together. So here we are together in Jamaica. It's 8 in the morning, hence Zuri is still in her PJs. But we're here for the poetry at 8 in the morning.
Yes. I have like two questions, because the main idea is that we're here to read poems. So before we get into some of these poems, I just going back to the title of our session, Writing Poetry, Embodying Queerness. While our writing and our activism comes from the people, the issues that surround us, the people, the issues that we love and live for, is there a thing such as a queer poem or a lesbian poem?
I don't know if
poem. I tell you that. Let me start with you, Staceyann.
I don't know if I believe that there's any such thing as am I muted? I don't know if there's any such thing as a gay poem or a queer poem or a lesbian poem or a Black poem, but I do believe that the structure of power and visibility has been so skewed towards whiteness that I think it is helpful to ask often if the poems we hear are in any way reflective of the larger representation of who we really are as people. So I don't know if I would say, because, you know, a poem written by a lesbian is not necessarily a lesbian poem, because the word lesbian is being used as an adjective there. And I don't necessarily believe that that's the adjective. I mean, it's one of the adjectives you could use to describe it, but it could also be a Jamaican poem or a girl poem or any other kind of poem. I think that my issue with some labels is that I think the label is good when it is used to widen who we are, and when it is used to narrow who we are, I think sometimes that's problematic. So if a straight person says to me that's a lesbian poem, then I'm a little bit worried about what you mean. And if a white person says that's a Black poem, but if a Black girl like Zuri says, oh my God, I love that because I want to hear the Black girl poem, it stirs music in me. So I think intention is sometimes very much a part of what creates impact.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. The only thing that I want to add, I love queer also as a as a word for being subversive, and in that way sort of challenging sort of normativity and heteronormativity. So maybe the poem itself, yeah, maybe it's the same thing as about widening representation, but also widening what we can do with structure and form and what is accepted. So I see sort of my not my role, but sort of where I'm committed towards is also widening what we think of as maybe poetry or as accepted topics or accepted representation. And in that way, I can find it useful. Not so much lesbian poem, but the queer, and specifically for me, it's like a sort of subversive term that I always see much wider than sexuality. That I think queerness for me, and I constantly engage with it, is also questioning myself in relation to normativity in all sorts of ways, not just sexuality or gender. But how that translates, then we come into that slippery slope of, oh yeah, this is a queer poem, which also means then if you're not queer, you're not engaging. It's like, no, this is a poem for people and you're a person. So yes, you must also engage.
I remember when I was I was invited by Derek Walcott to go study with him in Boston, and I went for maybe 6 months to study with him in Boston. And he would say to me, Staceyann, you're so talented with words. If you would only stop writing all about your vagina and all of this feminist stuff. And he said, I don't know, sexuality isn't universal. Or he used to say being gay isn't universal. And then I would say, but sexuality is universal. And we would have all these arguments all the time. And he really thought that if he could get me to write things that weren't kind of like overarchingly, obviously, kind of in your face, queer or feminist or sexual, and sexual from a place of being woman, that I could become a more universal poet. And, it really kind of stilled my pen in many ways, because I didn't allow my poems to be published at all, because there was a way that I heard his voice in the back of my head saying that material wasn't necessarily the work of the institution and the work that was valued. And it was only when he died, I started to think about publishing a collection of works. And to date, for a poet who's been a poet for so long in so many different spaces, I have one collection of poems. It's only because I just kind of didn't think that all of these poems that referenced, sex and sexuality and pussy and had the word fuck in them and all of that, it just didn't seem like it belonged in the place where poetry was on the page.
I appreciate your responses, both of you, because of that watered down, the attempts at trying to not be in your face as women, as feminists, as queer people, as Black people, because in different spaces, we enter into white spaces and we're expected to be neutral and not be bring our cultural specificity, right? You enter into quote unquote straight spaces, whatever that's supposed to mean, right? And you're expected to not be in people's spaces with your words, with talking about your vagina and your breasts. But there is a sense of liberation when that voice finally unlocks. When you're sitting in an audience and you are a woman who comes from hearing those words so much that they have become true. And you listen to a Staceyann who says, look at me, I am going to tell you about my life and about what I love and what makes me happy. Then I'm looking at Staceyann Chin and thinking, maybe I want to also write and talk about what makes me happy. So those issues become, they create even more than a ripple effect. So imagine if there is 100 of you and you are saying those things and you are speaking your convictions. I really appreciate those responses, because then what is human rights? What are women's rights? These are issues that slip into one another, and the same things when people talk about Black people's liberation in South Africa, but they don't talk about queer rights. So you're thinking, but aren't we fighting the same struggles? How do we separate being a Black person and being a queer person? You actually can't do that, Go ahead.
Can I jump? I want to jump in and ask Olumide. I know you have a kid, because you talked about, like, I gotta go pick her up in a second when, I know that life. And I just want to ask you, how is it that you at the same time, you kind of like encourage the kid to talk about who I am, what I feel, and at the same time you have to be kind of like parenting, because the queer by definition is a kind of anarchist idea. It's, tearing down structures, but then you find yourself in the mommy world where so I guess I'm maybe poking at you and saying this queering, meets mothering. How is it working out for you? And if you have any advice for me.
Yeah, I'd love. I think we're all a mother, so maybe we can trade some tips. Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you, because I did have that problem, because they're sort of coming from a very anarchist point of view, and then had a child, and I thought, ooh, I do have to set boundaries. And actually everything works a bit better when there are certain boundaries. So it's about the balance, that certain boundaries, I think, are there, and certain rules are there. And within those, to give a lot of freedom and to encourage expression. But the boundaries in the house, they're sort of maybe, and I'm using the word again, universal, around kindness, around behavior towards each other, and sort of what I want. What is my vision for life, I'm trying to also instill, because it is in a way about human rights. So if we're learning kindness now, you will know how to be compassionate to everyone. So things around that. But yeah, certain boundaries are true. And there's a lovely cartoon that went around Facebook sometime where a mother was talking, or a parent was talking to their kid, and then saying, yeah, money is an invention, capitalism is this and that, but bedtime is very, very real. That sums it up for me. And that's our house. That's the bedtime. That's it. You know what? I wanted to also jump in, but thank you for that. And my daughter's very free. My bedtime's free. Anyway, this idea of universal. Being universal, it's funny. I don't teach poetry, but I teach a lot of fiction writing. And in fiction writing, I always teach to be universal is to go down to the detail. That we have this morphed idea that we make it very objective so everybody fits in, but it's not that. We relate when it's actually very specific. And I think it's the same in poetry, what Natalia just said. This sort of, the more open you are, the more open the other person can be, and they can see themselves in that openness and reflect in that openness, rather than maybe the specific experience, but in that openness. And in the end, pain and love and all these things we share. And the other thing I wanted to respond to was Natalia saying about, we enter these neutral spaces, and that is where I've become very stubborn, because of course they are not neutral. They're always white, heteronormative man spaces where we should perform in a certain way and dull our voice in a certain way. And then every time I shrink myself, I think back to Toni Morrison and say, how unapologetic she was that she will write Black life, period. And I thought, okay, what is the best I can do as a writer? is to be my authentic self as a writer, period. And then hope it will land somewhere. But I'm not saying that it's very successful, but at the same time, that's, that I see value in that for myself and my own process.
I don't want to hold Zuri. I don't want to hold Zuri too fast, too long, because she has a very busy life and things to do. But she wanted to she wanted to read a poem from the book.
Zuri, please read a poem for us.
So I'm gonna have her read, and then I'm gonna have her dash off to her fantastically beautiful poetry-filled life.
Oh yeah.
So you want to read you want to tell them what book it's from first?
This is from
Wild Imperfections. And nice and loud, because we are working against many things on the outside. And all right.
And I'm reading Lessons to Learn by Natalia. Molebatsi.
Okay.
Lessons to learn. I do not know how to receive love, meaning I do not know how to live. I do not know how to dance to love, meaning I do not know how to be human. I want to learn these lessons, walk like I own the entire city and the body I live in, choose the battles of my heart. I want to learn the game of counting my blessings and remember that life comes with no manuals and no wings, but with the desire to craft them and have a little fun, maybe.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Zuri.
Oh my God, I appreciate you. Wow. I think you can teach us one or two things about life. Can you tell me, just like, if you had to choose 3 words about your mommy and the work that she does? 3 words. What would you say? Because there's so many words, right?
And you don't
so
have
many
to say
words in your life.
You don't have
if you
to
had
say.
to think of 3 words that can talk about your mom, which ones would they be?
Or you can choose 3 words of your favorite poet. I know I'm not her, so. Okay, all right, go on.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Strong.
Mm-hmm. Are you sure you got a third? You don't need a third.
Amazing.
Strong and wild.
Wild. Okay, we'll take wild.
We'll take wild. We'll take
All right,
wild.
good job.
And yes, high 10. And talking about parenthood in this space, you asked that question, Stacey, and it was really a question I also wanted to ask about how your stories are. How do you use them for both of you, the kind of activities that you do? How do you use them as tools for healing, for education, but not just for yourselves, but also for your children? I'm thinking about how Staceyann will always read with Zuri and write anecdotes and share them with other parents worldwide. I'm thinking about the project that you are doing with other queer parents, Olumide, Futures in the Making. How do you use these strategies? Because they pass over type of strategies. Crossover. Who wants to go first?
So Futures in the Making is not for queer parents, just for queer emerging writers. But I think it has a lot to do with what I said earlier about, I really have a very clear vision of what I would like the world to be like, and what I see my role in my creative role in that way. And I'm very hooked at the moment of this idea of world making. So how can my writing be something that also reflects world making and Black joy, Black queer joy, not shying away from the pain, but also contributing to something, to an opening. And in a way, that's maybe the only thing that I can really say, how, of course, as a parent, you think very much that you have to leave a world behind. It doesn't end with you. So I can't say that it's completely different to before being a parent, but this has sort of clarified my sense of how I engage, how I work, even to how I give my workshop. Is I want to center it around a sort of notion of radical care and this sense of world making. Can we behave in a way as if we were living in the world that we want to have? And if we can behave in that in as many spaces as possible and model that to our children, then some of this will rub off. So that's kind of, I don't know if that answers your question, but that just sort of comes to mind for me.
Yeah.
I'll piggyback off of that and say, one of the things that I've been kind of working through, I think it's very easy to separate theory from practice when you are living on your own and you're kind of like in your own head, because then you can kind of craft your environment. And in the moments when you are failing, there's no witness. And if there's a witness, you can walk away from them. And I think when you have children, it's kind of like when you have when you have any kind of intimate ongoing setup with other people, force you to be visible in moments when you don't necessarily want to be visible. But all other relationships outside of raising children leave space for you to exit, for you to close the door and say, I'm not having my best moment. Give me a minute to become a better self, and then I can kind of join the community again. One of the things I had a really hard time adjusting to is being visible all the time, especially for those of us who have public lives. We get to craft these lives where you get to see me being fierce when I post a video of me performing somewhere, or in interaction, or in a conversation, or being a good mom. But whether I post them or not, my kid has front seat viewing to when I am not a good mom, to when I am not behaving like I say she should behave. And we all have those things because we're human. And unfortunately, we are existing in a time when we are, even as we say it, we are living in a way that supports, nurtures, and affirms the idea that we are what we say we are, only in these spaces online, on Twitter, on IG, on TikTok, whatever. So who I wanted to be and who I was had to make a quick, fast journey from the moment I had a kid and she became sentient. And she began to ask me, if you say I can make a decision about my body all the time, how dare you insist that I put socks on when I do not want to put socks on? And how are you going to tell me that it's bedtime? And how are you going to tell me that I can't go on a date? And how are you going to tell me that I can't go over to my friends? I mean, and as the kid ages, I'm sure that the philosophical questions become more gnarly. But I'm beginning to, my kid is beginning to ask all kinds of shit.
I appreciate that, Staceyann, and I think Staceyann, I can just say, I don't know why I said your whole names, but I appreciate that. And I think that's very true. This you cannot run away, and it's like a mirror, because they also don't forget the tiniest little thing you did or you promised. I mean, God, and why is their memory so good and yours is so bad? I don't understand. But yeah, I appreciate that, because I think that's really important, that those of us who are parents, that we keep bringing that up, because I think there is also that pressure of this sort of perfection. And at the same time, I don't think it takes away from the ideal, all the great things, because yes, no one is perfect and these failings make us, but what makes us more is the trying, or the ideas that we have towards which we work. But yeah.
I think also being a parent, you don't have the option not to try. Like, you don't have days off. You don't have, you know, you can't just be like, I was shitty to you yesterday, so I'm just going to withdraw for a week. No, I was shitty to you an hour ago, and now I must go and make you a fucking sandwich. And I must go and, like, you're calling me to wipe your bum, which is a remarkably intimate thing that you need me for. And I have to do, because if I don't do it, then I have to deal with the poop in your pants. Like, I mean, it just is unrelenting in its, you know, exacting from you what it needs, regardless of your feelings about it. And either you can become the kind of person who would just break and, you know, die and become like a shell of yourself, or you're just gonna like find the wherewithal to grow and open up and expect more of yourself and demand more of yourself and show up and love, which is not unlike the business of being a poet, writing poetry, listening to other people's poems, where you consistently are indicted, where you are brought to feeling, where you are challenged about your own ideas, where your own poems from your youth challenge who you are now, where, you know, you imagine the poems after this will challenge who you are. I don't know. It's just like this. It's a relationship from which you cannot exit. It's the only girlfriend I've had that I cannot leave.
That you cannot leave, and that you nurture. And sometimes, I don't know, as a mother myself, I sometimes feel it's never enough. That the giving, which I love, is still never enough in terms of what I want to find out, in terms of what I want to receive, in terms of seeing this person grow. Somebody said in the previous conversation here at Poetry Africa that motherhood is also a knowledge center, is an institution of knowledge, that we always think about the academia and all these other institutions, but we don't think of being a mother as a production of all of this. You know, production sounds, without that capitalistic view of it, but that it is a knowledge space. And I'm just listening to the two of you now sharing this kind of knowledge. Does it, I want to move to a space of movement making. As a person, as a poet, as an activist, the kind of spaces that you have created, and even movement making in texts. I'm looking at Wild Imperfections, and the kind of contribution, the kind of giving of yourselves over the years. What is that becoming? What has that become? This is not the first collection that you've contributed to. This is not the first session that you've contributed to. This is a body of work that builds a movement. And how is that, how is that life for you? How is that a radical world-making strategy for you, Olumide?
Yeah. I think I have thought before, now I think a lot about world making. Before that, I thought a lot about my own privilege, that I thought, okay, I come from a very underprivileged background, but due to education and certain, you worked hard and whatnot, I've gained some privilege. So I very quickly became attuned to that and thinking, what can I do with this privilege? So how can I be of service to others to an extent? Yeah, how can I be of service to others, or pass some of that on as others have to me? Because that is then also not just cyclical, but it's light of flowing, and that is the only thing that comes to my mind. And so Futures in the Making is now called The Future is Back. It's a scheme for emerging queer writers. I run sessions in the way that I would teach at the MA, but the idea is to show people also the tips and tricks on how to survive as a writer, because those you don't learn. So we talk openly, for instance, about money and, you know, where do you make your income, how much this and that, and all these certain things that can help you carve out a way. So in terms of movement making, in terms of literary way, that's sort of my contribution as why, how can I want to make myself accessible. Not all the time, of course, I have boundaries, because, you know, you can't be constantly available, but I like that idea. And again, people have been to me. So that's sort of my contribution on the literary form, on the literary, in the literary world, I think. And generally, again, in my writing, it is about thinking queer and really thinking through how could relationships be different? How could things be different to what we've learned, whether we are lesbian or straight or queer or whatever. So that's, yeah, I'm not sure if that answers it. Like,
listen, you are just giving it the juice in this space, Staceyann.
I think that I'm listening to you, Olumide, and you I'm experiencing something now that I know we all experience. I'm listening to your life and thinking, my God, your life sounds so much more organized than mine, so much more intentional than mine. I know. And I see you laugh because I recognize that laugh when other people say to me, your life seems so intentional. And people say, oh, you're such a great mom, or you're such a great whatever. And all I hear are like, you know, the sound of coins falling into the piggy bank I must set aside for Zuri's therapy when she realizes how much trauma she's had by being raised by me. And only because we are all bruised by our parents, because, you know, I think the business of life is bruising. And I think because we don't have the answers, and because, as your poem says, you know, things don't come with a manual. And so we are just kind of trapped by we're not quite sure what to do, but we must do. We're kind of trapped by that rubric, that reality. And, you know, my life to me remains one grand fucking experiment. You know, I never know what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. I'm fascinated by movies that talk about other dimensions and, you know, bending time and flipping into a different space or going back into time, because I think it's fascinating that we have this one path that we must follow, and whenever we make a decision, we're kind of clearing the way through this massive foliage, this forestry of life that we have no idea what it is. And so one of the things that I do to make it make sense to me is I live in the microcosm quite frequently. That's my rest space. So I knew I wanted to leave New York, but I couldn't, you know, for a year. And I wanted to take Zuri to somewhere else where Black people lived, and Black people were the thieves, and Black people were the presidents, and Black people were the pilots, and Black people were the luggage carriers, and Black people were the helpers in the house, and Black people were the hairdressers, and Black people were the bankers. And I knew I wanted her to live. And South Africa was high on that list of places where we would go. And so, but I couldn't, like, you know, I have friends who can map out entire 5-year plans, and I can't do that. What I do is I'm saying, okay, I buy a house. I have to buy a house because I can't afford the rent in New York. And I buy a house in New York. And then I say, I have to leave. Now that I own my own house, when I go back to New York, my rent won't be different. It will be the same mortgage. So now I can leave New York now that I've bought the house. And so I pick up the kid, and it's coronavirus time and we're all stuck at home inside in New York anyway. It's a good time to leave. Just get up, Staceyann, and Zuri is gonna like hate wanting to, like, you know, move, but she's gonna go with you, and you come to Jamaica and you stay with a friend for a couple of months, and then you end up, and so it's all this grand experiment. And I think I just kind of stay with the experiment. And if Olumide, if you ask me to come and teach at your workshop, then I'll come and be with your students and I will teach. And if Yale asks me to come for a semester, I will go. Or if Wits asks me to come for a semester, I will go. And then I try to be friends with people who are in places where I go, and I try to have lots of dinners with them, and I try to have my kid interact with their kid. And then I just write about that. So I don't know what the big process is. I don't have this big grand plan, but I feel like I get through every day, and I get through the small decisions of between here and the day after tomorrow and the day after that. And then when I get through that, and then I have an adventure, and then shit goes, crazy. Like you buy a house and it has no sewage system. You learn this after you buy the house, and then you're like, oh my God, I have to find $26,000 to replace the sewage system. And you replace the sewage system, and then you write about it. And, if you just keep living and keep writing, it's all, the two are so, the movement building, the living, the writing, it's kind of one big juicy thing. It's like you can't have like the orgasm without any intention, like you just have to just one thing after the other, just keep it going. So I listen to you, Olumide, and your life just sounds so organized. But I know from like my own experience too, when people say that to me, that you're like flailing around like the rest of us, but it looks so good.
Well, thank you very much. No, because I think the intention is clear, and it probably doesn't really change that much. It evolves. So the intention and my vision is the same, but for the rest, it's the same. It's what comes your way. But also, I'm quite comfortable with this. And this is the interesting thing about, I think, this time and coronavirus. I think a lot of us had to get comfortable very quickly with not knowing what's going to happen next. Whether it was your work or, maybe people lost their homes, etc. And I mean, that's the one thing I don't have is, a very stable home. But I think my performance, I used to be a performer, and I started as a juggler, and it's a great metaphor for me. I'm very comfortable with, once it goes up, it will come down. So something else is going to happen. But in the same way, in my gut, I know what I want from life, or how I want to approach it. Not so much the details of jobs and, all these things that other people measure things by, but my intention, my vision of how I want to relate to people. That is the thing, and that I can do almost every day.
Yeah, the Olumide School of Juggling, I am enrolling, because I think all of us need that balance of the messy business of love, as we talk about in Wild Imperfections. I want to ask you to read some poems and tell me why, how this poem fits in this book for you.
So I think I'm just going to read The Hustle, because I've been here talking about how we don't know what we're doing, because it's kind of all a hustle, a jumbled, messy. I love, and anyways, I want to ask again other questions in other panels. The Hustle. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this book. We've loved reading it, Zuri and I. The Hustle. I ain't no mystic, no magic beans, just flesh and bone, honing practice. I don't preach. If I teach you anything, it's caprice. No intent, just trying to mark the extent of my own humanity, how it connects to you. Never mind these shores, artificial borders. We are all hoarders of each other's pain. Joy cometh in the morning, at night too. True words, birds and bees. Trees also bear flowers before they push fruit. Even the suits and ties skirting modern day lies have to begin somewhere. Flesh meets pavement, meets dirt, meets dog. Every city is pretty packed with people and paintings and pipes and petrified remains of those we loved or hated. No matter how history is stated, we are products of it, parcels of things created by what happened before and what never happened before that. Cats and dogs, merchants and makers of stuff. Rough times we in, but our skin is tougher than the pins they push in. Sin and sorrow tomorrow will come, and we will be here, honing, hoarding, holding, breathing still, standing still, standing, still standing.
Yes.
I don't even want to say anything after that.
Yeah.
Feeling my heart and reminding me of why this book had to come to life, to put together the works of the likes of you, Staceyann, with these poems. You want to read another one? Please unmute yourself. Thank you very much.
Okay. Dirty, pretty, revolution food or dirty, pretty things. You decide which one. Just pick.
Dirty, which one? You decide. Dirty, pretty things. I like that one. It's.
Okay, dirty, pretty things. And because it's so queer and so gay and so in your face. As luck would have it, I was bleeding when you fucked me. Pretty red tones of earth, hot stones resting on my cramping womb. I was shy, but you made me muddy and wet. Water and bloom, you unearthed me, pretty dirty thing. Sang me notes of grit and wit. Fit me, bowl, and drank me milk. Honey, honey, I will be whatever you need. When you crave it, wave me white flag and surrender. Render me undone, tear me jagged edge. Never mind how neat things are. I have walked farther than these crazy weeds sprouting dandelions, like the stain of me seeping on schedule. You came to me in spurts. Love is always a little messy, you said, but pretty or dirty, I feel so much better with your body pressed up against me. This is how I remember it. I said, lead me to temptation. I'd rather have Mary Magdalene taught me than follow that tax collector, St. Matthew, anywhere. Damn the fire and damnation, you said. I'm not no stranger to being dirty. We are all a little soiled. My flesh has been used for pleasure many times, been ravaged by a ritual of floods, fingers, furtive prayers. The first time you fucked me, all my transgressions were delivered into you. When you wrote, I love you in my blood on my belly, when you drew letters, fingers red from my insides, when you pinned me, when you made me look, made me lie there, gut aching with uncertainty, when you said, this much I know, I love you, dirty, pretty thing, and every rhythm in me stilled, all the ill winds I carried from my childhood in my pulse, on my breath, the timely tap on my own sad sap, dripping, fearful, disappeared. And all I could see was me, long-legged girl gazelle, laid out dirty and pretty, my crimson pussy pounding against the words you had penned. This memory will stay with me forever. Pretty, dirty woman. It don't matter as long as you keep riding me in the red, as long as you keep leaving these bloody smudges of our mounting when you're done.
Yes, brave and safe and beautiful and necessary. Olumide, we want to close with your poems.
Okay, so because we're reading two, the first one is very much about certain homophobic countries or anyway, there's one poem I really want to read, but now we have to read two, so I'm going to read this one as well. Yeah, it's about this idea of culture and queerness not being compatible with culture, certain cultures. Mm-hmm. Mercy killing. How many among the broken? Clad shadows with mornings, unforgiving memories with release. How not always politely turn both cheeks, wear the mourning like we bear anything. If you dish it and say, it's culture. Witness not only the holy outpourings and grant them respect, it would not return. Hanging on the front cover like rolling stones, hanging on to dear life, undo that spirit's meaning. From every drip of ink, impeccable sewn across the vastness, the depths of longing, belonging, until death do us part. There, amongst the elders, place that anguish, pushing, ask, how? Don't forgive, because some dress it, it is culture, then clothe it in mortal sin, so impeccably woven, as if the vastness, as if the depths did not swallow us without mercy. And this one speaks to a lot of, thank you, this one speaks to a lot of things we talked about the messiness and all of it. And it's called Show Me. Let's not be strangers to each other, locked away by distance, not the physical, but the not showing, the leaving ourselves half behind, not caring as in a verb, as in an allowing to grow and be and feel each other and ourselves. Let's not be strong forever and fierce, kicking asses like we do. Let's fall apart on the kitchen floor or the lounge, not in the bedroom, hidden away with the blinds shut, but in full view of each other, wailing and shouting and raising ourselves. Let's not be self-sufficient and capable, those that make things happen, taking care of nothing today. Let's be shameful and silent, not resisting or carrying our children, not plotting and making it through. Be broken in all pieces without putting back the jigsaw. Let's listen carefully, not to the words which we are so good at uttering, precise and relevant. Let's be quiet and hear the pain, the heartache, the tired of it all. Show me, and from there, the ground we lie on, we can see the world above.
Thank you. Yes, world. Olumide, Popoola, Staceyann, reading from Wild Imperfections, an anthology of womanist poems. You can get yours in South Africa at any bookstore. You can also go to wildimperfections.com to get your copy that is coming out internationally from Cassava Republic Press. The generosity, the bravery, the vulnerability of this work is the kind of work that saves the world. We have come to the end of it so soon, though. I just can't believe it. Thank you, Poetry Africa, for giving us this moment, this time. I cannot leave without Staceyann and Olumide giving us one last 30 seconds of something that you want to say before you leave now.
I don't have much to say except that this collection's got Lebohang Mashile, it's got Cheryl Clark, it's got Nikki Giovanni in it, it's got like just everybody you can think about. If you have a favorite poet in your head, they're probably in this book. Get it, get it, get it. Put your money where you say your fucking politics are. Buy the fucking book. Go somewhere and buy the book. Everybody be talking about a lot about like, oh my God, I support all you white feminists listening in. Go and buy 100 of these books and gift them to Black girls, Black women, queer people, people who don't have money to buy books. Put your money where your fucking politics are and support Black art. Don't just sit there and grin or weep or whatever the fuck white people tend to do. Go and buy a book and buy a couple of these books and pass them on to somebody else.
Hey, why are you my person? This is why. This is why you are my person. Thank you. Olumide.
I can't follow that, but I can only say...
Neither can I. Neither can I.
But I can only say, let's all be wild together. Because I mean, there's no bigger compliment. Let's be wild together.
Yeah, let's us be wild. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Thank you so much for embodying all that you are. The queer, the mother, the activist, the human. I appreciate learning from your actions and watching you, and may the actions, the texts, the movement outlive us as we give future people, hopefully, something to look to, a point of reference, a political, a social reference. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for your lives. Thank you to the Center for Creative Arts, for the Arts and Culture Department at the KwaZulu-Natal, the French Institute of South Africa, Total